So welcome everyone who's arriving. We're just going to wait a minute or two. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. I'm Jackie Klopp and I'm here with my colleagues, and we are going to start shortly on our short introductory course on digital data and tools for transport research. Great, so I think we should start. Welcome everyone to our session today on digital data and tools for transport research. I'm Jackie Klopp. I'm at Columbia University, and I'm going to moderate this session. Today, we are going to have the first part of two different sessions. And the structure is we have 3 hours. We're going to take a break after each one very briefly. We'll start with the introduction. We will then go into digital transport for Africa and transit mapping. And we'll look then afterwards at a very particular case study and some of the tools used to map, and in this case, Accra. So I'm going to introduce my co-instructors very briefly, starting with my colleague Agra at World Resource Institute. Agra, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Jackie. And hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Agra Ali, and
oh, I see you're muted. Can you unmute?
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I can.
All right. I hope you can hear me now. Yeah, so thank you, Jackie, and hi, everyone. My name is Agra Ali, and I work at the WRI. I'm an urban planner and designer by profession. Currently, I'm working at WRI as a GIS research analyst, and basically, I'm working on a project called DigitalTransport4Africa, which is a collaborative mapping initiative for transit systems in Africa. Thank you very much.
Great, and Estheline?
Hi, everyone. My name is Estheline Dusabe. I'm an urban mobility project specialist at WRI Africa. I'm based in Addis, Ethiopia. I work mainly to the project called DT4A. It's mainly meant to aim to support mapping system for public transport for African cities and integrated transit planning. I'm very delighted to be here, and I will later on speak or introduce about DT4A project. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Estheline. And Angela?
Hello, everyone. My name is Angela. I am an environmental engineer by profession and also a field research manager for the GUMA project that I would present later on. Yes, in addition to that, I'm a geospatial enthusiast or specialist. I don't know, but I'm in between. Yeah, that's about me.
Great. And Enoch?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Enoch and I'm a cartographer. I love maps. Today I'll be telling you about public transport mapping in Accra and some interesting stuff in GIS. So thank you and looking forward to a great session.
Great. And Daniel.
Sorry, I was trying to find my camera. Hi, everyone. Daniel Oviedo from University College London. I work mostly on transport, informality and accessibility in global South cities. And I'm going to be speaking about a project where we have done participatory mapping of walking in low-income settlements in Freetown in Sierra Leone during our second session. Very pleased to meet you.
Great. And Constant.
Hi everyone, my name is Constant Kapp, an urban planner based in Nairobi. I work at Census Africa, which is part of Code for Africa. And I'll be attending today's session and also facilitating part of the next session, and really looking forward to this engagement.
Great. Oops, sorry. Great. Thank you so much, Constant. I would also like to say that, so we have an amazing group of instructors. We'll also have Priyanka D'Souza, who will join us in the next session in December. If you have any questions while we're going through anything, please feel free to put them in the chat. You can also email us in between the classes with any questions or concerns at info@digitaltransport4africa.org and CC me as well. Let's start. And I just do want to remind people actually that we will have the second class. So I would like to begin by giving a bit of an overview about why we're doing this class. And also, sorry, I'm just having internet problems today. Okay. Why this is important, what we're going to talk about today. So to begin, we know that most people in African cities use different forms of popular transport. They're using minibuses, they're using motorcycles, they're walking a lot. And this is the bulk of the transportation in African cities. And there has been an old way of doing transportation research using surveys, origin, destination analysis. So basically going to households and asking them questions about where they travel to. A lot of the focus of this research is on roads and building to facilitate traffic as it already exists. But we know we have a lot of issues, from crashes to air pollution to congestion, that require new ways of thinking about our transport systems, and also in relation to land use. So we also need some new forms of research. Now, a lot of the information that we do have around our existing transport systems is hidden. A lot of it is static. So for example, in this slide, you see a Word document that is quite old that we found for the Matatu, the bus system in Nairobi, that was very outdated, doesn't have any spatial information. On the other side, you see this beautiful map of a bus system in Addis that people have done, trying to create the route system. The truth is that in large parts of Africa, we don't have standardized transport data, especially data that is spatialized, digitized, and can be analyzed using new tools. And so this is a very, very big problem. And also it means that we don't have data for other kinds of services like passenger information services. So this has a lot of consequences, certainly for research, this failure to have proper data. As I mentioned, it means we don't have like dynamic maps. We don't have passenger information a lot of times. We have little or no data on emissions, which is really important for understanding the role of transport in climate change, but also for air pollution. We don't have planning tools that are readily available in many other cities. We don't have modeling to really understand the system as it is. And there's a lack of accountability. So we can't do benchmarking of projects. If a road project goes in, you know, how is that you know, being measured in terms of its impacts? And we also have the Sustainable Development Goal in transport. And very few people are actually trying to measure if we're meeting that goal. And we know that we have very, very serious trends in African cities that requires new approaches and having diverse kinds of data to study and come up with ways to address these problems. And I mentioned a few before, from air pollution, where transport is a key source in African cities, crashes, congestion. On top of it, there's vulnerability to climate change and shocks, even though Africa itself produces very few of the greenhouse gas emissions, but they are growing, especially in the transport sector in African cities, and that's an opportunity for climate finance, but you need to have an understanding of your emissions. There's also a very serious problem of vehicle recycling, which, you know, is when globally people move to electric vehicles or lower emission vehicles, a lot of the more polluting vehicles will end up in places like Africa. So we really need a lot of sophisticated research and activism to address these complex of problems. More recently, there's been a focus on bus rapid transit and big projects, which is for mass transit, which is a step forward for sure. But even in that case, we really need to be able to have more comprehensive data about the existing system. Clearly, popular transport needs to be integrated into any mass transit system, which the government of, you know, in Addis Ababa discovered when they did their light rail, and they had not planned for the integration with their minibuses, for example. And so just having these mass transit projects is not going to be a comprehensive solution. There needs to be a lot more thinking, again, that's data driven. So I just really wanted to make that point. And also with these mass transit projects, a lot of times the research and the data that goes behind thinking about their design is not very available. And we'll talk about open data in a minute. But we are in this age of digital age where, because of these new devices like cell phones, which are constantly, especially when they're GPS enabled, producing a lot of different data, often what we call digital exhaust. Sometimes we're not even aware of it, that, you know, we are contributing to big data that can be useful. But a lot of the big data is not available, like the telecoms data that would be very useful. And so there's a real need to just find the digital tools that we as researchers and public transport advocates can use now to get the kind of data that we need. But we definitely need to leverage this new digital age. And what you've seen over the last maybe decade or so is the rise of the use of these digital tools within transport research and planning. And that the different kinds of tools are clearly things like the cell phone that's GPS enabled, that allows you to collect a lot of different kinds of data, and also lower cost sensors that allow you to get different kinds of data that is digital and can be streamed onto platforms and analyzed and provided to the public. For example, low cost air quality sensors that can also be used for transport research. And so this is a huge opportunity, but it also means that transport researchers need to start learning and thinking about how they're going to use these tools in their work. And it can be very intimidating. I want to say that I am not a person who was trained in any of this technology. I'm a social scientist. I'm older than most of you. So I've had to sort of overcome barriers and say, this is so important. I need to work with people like Enoch or Angela to figure out how to do research and get the kinds of data that I need. just to give you a very rough idea for those of you who have not really been using these tools, this is what some of this data might look like. It might be you are using your GPS in your phone to be able to get latitude and longitude. Maybe you're riding a route. In this case, this is a Matatu route as part of the Digital Matatus project. And as you're going along the route, you're seeing different stops and you're getting their geolocation, which now allows you to put this in digital form on a map. You can also start to collect other kinds of information. We were interested in which bus stops are designated versus undesignated. Turns out 60% of the bus stops in Nairobi are just informal. They're created by people and the Matatu sector. And a lot of those bus stops need to be upgraded or improved. And so you can start to get in understanding of important infrastructure for transport. Interestingly, sometimes when you do this mapping, good things can come out of it. In Maputo, for example, where this project Mapa dos Chapos did this mapping, the city officialized bus stops and actually did improve them once they were aware of the fact that you could make these bus stops visible. You could start asking questions about how well they're maintained, for example. And then in some of the bus stops, they put new passenger information services. So in this case, research actually led to action. And what's really great is once you can start putting this data in digital form and you can start to see the whole system. I mean, that beautiful map of the bus system in Addis that was on paper, it was very beautiful, allows you to do that too. But by doing this kind of digital work, you can also have more dynamic maps. You can continually update or even see how they are dynamic. This information also really allows you to see the system. So you're able to do network analysis, or you're able to actually see the air quality. So it allows you new ways to see the system, or at least better ways or more efficient ways to do that. And you can then start to do new kinds of analysis. So if you have the data of bus network, for example, you can do network analysis. You can see where there are inefficiencies or where better networks might lead to better outcomes. You can start to do things like measure access that we couldn't do before without this kind of data. So we're seeing a lot of accessibility studies, for example, by the World Bank and transport researchers. Here you see a picture from a World Bank report that drew on the mapping work of digital matatus to look at where people can access a hospital, within a 30-minute matatu ride. So you can start to see which pockets, in the city don't have access to critical resources. So this really gives us an important new tool. And then we can start also, because modes to some extent are proxies for socioeconomic status. For example, people who walk tend to be poor. People who take the buses tend to be a little wealthier, maybe lower middle class, and people who have a personal car tend to be the wealthy. And you can start to look at access by different mode and see that there's great social inequality in access for lots of different reasons, but you can start to see it. There are new tools available once you have digital data. For example, this is Transport Analyst, again, that gives you an idea of places you can reach by matatu within a certain period of time. Of course, it doesn't take into effect complex traffic patterns and things like that, but you can start once you have digital data using all kinds of tools, including, for example, open source tools provided by groups like the World Bank. In this case, for example, there's open transit indicators that takes your data and gives you an idea, if you have the right data, obviously, how good your service is. So there's basically a wealth of tools that you can start to use as a transport researcher once you have access to digital data. But one thing I really want to emphasize is that first of all, you have to be able to access this data, and therefore open data for researchers is very important. A lot of times you have companies or even consultants working for governments that gather data, but they don't make it available. And so there isn't a proper planning or public discussion around that, the decisions that are getting made. It's very important, therefore, that you have open data to have that kind of access as researchers and also as citizens and advocates. Another point that's really important is that data needs to be standardized as much as possible. So basically, collecting data or using data that's in a standardized format then allows you to use lots of different digital tools like Transport Analyst or the World Bank's Open Transit Indicator, software that requires the data to be inputted in a particular standard. So there's a real push for open standardized data, and Agra and Angela are going to talk about that, I think, as well. And there are different standards, OpenStreetMap and GTFS standard for transit is one that we're going to talk about in this class. So I just really want to emphasize that standardization is important for interoperability and access to lots of different tools. And those tools ideally are also open source, so you don't have to pay a lot of money for them. And there are growing open source digital tools that transporters can use, transport researchers can use, that we'll talk about. And it's also very important, obviously, that once you get digital data, that you have ways to update it, and there are digital tools to do that. That can be customized depending on your research. If you're interested in security, or you're interested in gender, or you're interested, you can start working with developers to create the kinds of tools to get the kind of data you need, and also to keep data updated. All of this, of course, requires resources. And therefore, what's very important is that we share data. It's a valuable resource. It allows us to do lots of different research. And when we do research, have other people and check our research, right? So increasingly, there is a movement that's very important to create these open data portals with the standardized data, so that you know where to go to get data, and you can also share data. And this allows a whole new wealth of research and also innovation to happen. And we're going to also be talking about that, including DigitalTransport4Africa, which is one of the portals we're trying to really support and build to share data and also share experiences and to network. So that will be a resource available to you. Also, I want to flag OpenAQ, which is trying to do the same thing for air quality data. So this approach is what we call the digital commons approach. I'm not going to talk about it because my colleagues at World Resource Institute are going to do that shortly. I'm just going to end, really. This is just meant to be a big overview and to motivate why we're starting these kinds of classes. But I do want to say that because now we are in a new digital world, there are all kinds of governance issues around data that have emerged. And there are, as I mentioned before, big companies like Google gathering data all the time, sometimes from people who don't even know when they've activated a app that allows them to track their movement, that other people are using their private data. And so as we start to engage in this world as transport researchers, it's very important that we follow good governance and good practices around privacy, around sharing, and around, so, and these good sort of digital principles. And there are some principles you can study and get to know so that you can practice, digital data management and in an ethical way. there are the digital principles of development, and I've put a link to a couple quick courses you can do to get up to speed on that. Cities are coalescing around digital rights, so citizens know what their rights are in relation to data. And of course, there's this big open data movement that's really important. And finally, I'm just going to end with the motivation for the kinds of discussions that we're going to have. And you know, data is an enormous resource, and who controls it and how it's used is really, really important. And I'm just going to end with this quote. A city run on data has to collect that data. And this is increasingly our digital world. So who collects it, analyzes it, and owns it, then becomes an incredibly powerful player in that city. It's a quote by the International Transport Workers Federation. And, you know, sorry, I think I just messed that up. Anyway, so, you know, what's very, very important that transport researchers like yourself or advocates get conversant in understanding digital data, the digital tools, and the governance of that data for your own discipline and also for your societies. And so this is why we're putting together this course where you're going to have a chance to ask a lot of questions. There are no stupid questions. As you can see, I'm not the most technically adept myself by the way I'm doing this presentation. And we need to move towards lots of collaborations between the tech sector and the transport research sector to come up with creative ways to do research and also to build a digital data commons. So I'm going to end there. And see if there's any questions. Great. We have, I think, a small enough group that if anyone wants to jump in, they can, but feel free also to put this in the questions in the chat. Do any of my colleagues want to make any additional comments on this overview? Okay, so we have a question from Luis. And that is, thanks for the presentation. Are there any specific list of tools we can use to collect and access transport data? Yes, there are, and we are actually going to give some of those lists and resources in a little bit, but maybe Agra or Eslaline, do you want to jump in on that question?
Sure, yeah, Jackie, thank you. Yeah, so there are a wide variety of tools for example, for devices that have like GPS enabled functionality. So if you have any smartphone that has a GPS, so you can get a list of these tools from our resource center. So we will discuss about that and the ways to access the resource center later on my presentation. So yeah, there are a bunch of tools to do that.
Great. Well, we'll keep gathering questions as we go along. And And I think we can maybe just jump into the next presentation because we have quite a bit of time. If we don't have any other questions, unless any of my colleagues want to make any other, comments. Oh, we do have another question from Gladys. With the increasing laws and regulation on data, especially on data, how possible will it be to share data for use? Yeah, this is a really good question. I know that in some places like Kenya, they've passed very strict laws on privacy. And so you have to be able to really anonymize data, which is a good practice anyway, if you want to share it. A lot of the data that we're just starting out with, which is very basic, like, mapping out the routes and the stops and things like that, is not personal data. There's nobody attached to that data. It's just, so in that case, there should be no barriers to sharing it. I do want to say, though, that sometimes as researchers, I should say, but I want to emphasize that some actors are just not very conscious of this, and they might contract people to do the mapping. And in that contract, it's very important to say that data is open and available. I had a colleague at the World Bank, for example, doing accessibility studies that hired a transport company. They're companies that are growing, these transport mapping companies. And the company in the contract had put that the data was private. And so that created enormous problem. And the World Bank colleague was very upset about not having really made this a focus, that the data has to be open. So part of the movement is really being conscious about that, making sure that as we create data, we intend at the beginning to share. If the data is personal in the sense that you're like tracking real people, you obviously need some sort of ethical approval, and also to do that kind of research, but also, yeah, you have to absolutely make sure that you're not sharing personal information. So that we'll talk a bit more about that. And you can also take the course on the digital principles of development, and we can give you more information, Gladys, about how to look into those issues of digital rights. Okay, thank you, Frederick. Great. So thanks, Frederick. Always, Nairobi's always in my presentations. Great. Are there any other questions? This is supposed to be very formal, by the way, and you can ask as many questions as you want. And as I said, there's no bad question here. We really wanted to have this opportunity for you to also interact with technical experts who are going to give the next round of talks. Great. Well, why don't we jump into the next talk, which is actually, some of the questions have led exactly to, this is a really good segue, given some of the questions, I should say. So Agra and Etheline, are you ready to maybe jump in?
Yes, Jackie.
Yes.
Great.
So, hi again. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
I'm trying to make it in presentation mode. Is it in presentation mode already?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So allow me to do not use a video because of the internet connection. Just, I don't want to be disturbed while presenting. So I guess everyone can understand that. Okay, so Thank you very much, Jackie, for the interesting presentation. And thank you once again for making this. So I'm really glad to be in this exciting group and present to you what we do in WRI, specifically for DT4A project. So my name is Estelle Dusabe, and I'm an urban mobility project specialist at WRI Africa. So my presentation today focuses on the following outline. So I will tell you more about DT4A project, like what are we doing to support African cities in terms of open transit data, like how we support public transport mapping, what opportunities and challenges that we are facing, and how we collaborate with other stakeholders and researchers. And my colleague Agrao will give a second part of the presentation, which will be more focused on practical things. So DT4A is or Digital Transport for Africa is a project that's founded in 2019 by WRI, MIT, Columbia University, and AFD. So it works basically to scale up and support every mobility project based on the principles of open data, knowledge sharing, and open source software. So we are doing this, we are a consortium of different partners across the world. As you can see from the slide, we have more than 15 stakeholders, and we pledge to advance safe, affordable, and accessible towards sustainable urban transport system for all. And we provide support for local government, private companies, and startups and organizations that aim to sustain urban mobility. So we have a website and blogs platform to facilitate our community, our communication among different stakeholders and researchers. So, and I would really encourage you to always visit our website to keep up to date with our work. We accept and publish blogs from various authors, including researchers, transportation planners, and specialists who use the data set from our data repository. As a researchers, you can find many opportunities on DT4A blog. So you can easily connect with a global network of urban experts and be exposed to global media and raise your profile on global stage. And also those who are really interested in data analysis are also welcome. So this is just a guideline of what kind of blog we accept on our platform, such as length, audience content, which should be applicable to African cities contexts, and the blogs should be original. And also this is like a structure that we accept for the blog to be in our website. So if you are really interested, you can reach out to us through this email, and we would be happy to support you. In DT4A Knowledge Center, we have different policies and applications and open source tools and different materials for trainings. In our Gitlab, we have transit data set for 14 African cities. As a researcher, also you can access our Gitlab Repository and Knowledge Center, and you can use our repository data set for research purpose or further analysis, for example. And moreover, you can post a data set on DT4A repository. This is just to show you how transit data is critical in Africa. For example, in our GitLab, GitLab Repository, we have transit data set for only 14 cities in GTFS dataset standard, which means for that 45 million people have access to reliable transit data, while more than 150 million with no reliable transit data and tools. So so DT4A project aim to provide more reliable transit data and tools. These are the main 3 pillars we work under. The first one is learn pillar. We undertake different convenings, workshops, trainings for different stakeholders and mapping community. The second pillar is to create. We undertake data collection projects and from different African cities, and also we share the data that we have in our data sets. So we are not doing this alone. We do this in collaboration with cities, private companies, academic institutions, and local mapping community. This is just one example of the project that DT4A has been conducted in Addis Ababa city. It has been in 2017. As you can see from the slide, we bring together different partners. We build a framework and move on data collection projects. So we work in this project, work together with the ministry and then different stakeholders as advisor and technical lead. We also work together with the universities or academic institutions. Here we work with the Addis Ababa University in terms of data collection and data processing. So why are we doing this? As we all know, we do this to measure or to help African countries to measure progress towards SDGs target and also other global targets to reduce air pollution and decarbonize the transport sector. So we already know that. So without data, as already Jackie mentioned earlier, we can't measure how far we are. The other issue also is related to an increase of motorization in most of African cities, which result to the highest rate of road fatalities. So as you can see, or some of you know, African city or African continents have the highest rate for road fatalities comparing to other regions. So we are working, and if we promote the usage of public transport, we believe that the accident can, or the use of the motorized vehicle can also decrease. So during this, we have been facing different challenges. The first challenge that we can mention is about sustainability of transit mapping project and updating data sets. So most of the cities or most of African cities, they understand that they need to have transit system mapping, but they don't have capacity to undertake the project and maintain the data set. So as you can see from this example, in our repository, in DT4A repository, we have our data that we have, the latest is due to 2019, which is already 3 years ago. So, as we already know, the data, transport data have to be always updated. So we really facing such kind of problem, and we aim to push the local government. We need to push the local government or the local community mappers to undertake this idea of mapping and update transit data system. The other challenge that we are facing is about sharing and uploading of data. So we are aware that there are a lot of countries, African countries, that they have transit data across the region, but the local government, they are not really willing to share their data. So we are promoting open source data, but we are still facing that problem. Also, the other challenge is like uptake and use of transport data. We aim to go beyond mapping. Already Jackie mentioned that area. So if you, for example, we have data, we have some countries have, we have data, but if we are not really using it for further analysis, for further planning, the data is just useless. So we really want to promote, to encourage countries to use their data by planning, but like, for example, this is one of example for Addis Ababa. They use their transit data set to do accessibility mapping for the city. So they try to manage and identify some of the areas in the city where they need to provide more transit services. So we really want to see African countries which have already data to use it in more planning and further analysis. The other challenges that we are facing is about visibility and utilization of DT4A website. So as you can see from the slide, the top 10 countries that are really visiting our repository, I mean DT4A repository, the top 3 are from outside of our continent. Of course, it's fine because we are promoting the open data usage, but we want to see African cities engaging in this platform and use data. So despite the challenges, there are also more opportunities. So there is a huge interest from authorities or from local authorities and also policymakers. They understand, nowadays they are really understanding the importance of having transit data, having public transport map. So this is a good opportunity that we see and also the other opportunity that we see is to measuring progress of SDGs and decarbonization. Another opportunity we see is from operators' side. So the current pandemic or the current COVID-19 is really pushing most of the operators to move forward, like to look for other techniques. Like, for example, now operators are really trying to shifting from paper-based ticketing to electronic ticketing. So we believe that this is a great or a potential opportunity for operators and for researchers towards sustainable urban transport planning. And also the other opportunity that we see is about the applications and tools that are being developed. So in the DT4A project, as we are working with many partners, and they are really dedicated and passionate to provide tools and also to give to the African continent. So the other big, I can say like a big opportunity that we have as a DT4A and of course African continent is the funding that we got from AFD or from French Development Agency to support mapping and to go beyond. So, and also we are planning the DT4A Innovation Challenge in coming month. So I will come back later on to this point. So as I mentioned, during, we got DT4A got a funding from AFD for 3 years. So we are now at the first year. And during this 3 years, we are planning to undertake a mapping project in 10 to 15 African cities. And among these, we want to see, or to at least 4 cities that are moving to go beyond mapping. And also we aim to provide trainings and workshops to 15 cities, as well as we want to increase the use of resources center. And moreover, or the most important things that we are planning area is the DT4A Innovation Challenge. So in December, we are planning to announce DT4A Innovation Challenge. So this is an open call for innovation that focuses to support innovation initiative and projects that aim to transform African transit system by leveraging open data and innovation. So I think most of you can be interested in this point, because we are the applicant should be or may be either organization, academic, research institution, private companies, individuals, which must have the support of local government. The applicant can apply for one of the following activities, including technology, or those applicants who want to develop tools for transit data collection, also for applicants who focusing on building the capacity of local government, and also the researchers and analysis for those applicants who really want to go to move beyond mapping through existing transit data set that you can find from our repository, for example. So we are planning to launch this challenge in December on 7th, and we will be having 2 informational sessions virtual. So the first session will be on 14th of December for English-speaking applicants, and also the second session will be on 16th December for French-speaking countries. So, so anyone who is interested, you can keep an eye on our websites to know an update regarding this innovation challenge. So that's from me by now, and feel free to ask me any question. I don't know if Agrao can go ahead, or maybe we can answer some questions regarding my presentation. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Essaline. That was terrific. And we're very excited to see the Innovation Challenge. And I do hope that some people here in the class will think about applying. Are there questions for Essaline? Constant is clapping. I'll join him. Well done. Do we have any questions? People can raise their hands. I know there's quite a lot to take in. And also, you know, this is a 2-part class, you know, and so you should feel free to just reach out to us whenever as well. When something occurs to you. There is a question about which are the 10 to 15 cities. Are they identified already?
Okay, so thank you very much, Alex, for your question. For those, the 10 or 15 cities are not yet identified. Of course, we are still working on that. And we are, because our project aim to work in all African cities, we aim to have French speaking countries and English speaking countries. So every country is a target by now. So we are not yet identified, and we are happy to hear any recommendation from your participants. You can also lead to us to engage with those countries.
Great. So it sounds very open. That's great. Are there any other questions at this moment? If not, we might take just a very quick 5-minute break. Everyone can get up and get their cup of tea or coffee, and we'll come back and we'll continue this discussion with a presentation by Agra. So let's take a few minutes a break, and we'll be right back. And feel free to think about questions and put them in the chat in the meantime. Hi, everyone. I hope people got a chance to get a little stretch and a beverage. Hopefully, people are coming back. Agra, are you with us?
Yes, Jackie. Hi, I'm here.
Hi. Did you manage to get a little break?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you. So shall I start or?
Yeah, I think so. Can people give us an indication that you're ready? Maybe a smiley face or some kind of reaction? It's our new Zoom world. I'm going to give you a thumbs up. All right, I'm seeing some more here. It's really tough to do these things online when you can't see people's faces. And oh, I'm getting some thumbs up. All right, let's just give it 1 second. And then Samuel is asking about the slides. And yes, we can absolutely make the slides available. And Maina's asking, how long will the Innovation Challenge run for?
Maybe Esteline can jump in and answer that question. Esteline?
For the innovation?
Yes.
Okay, so the application will start on 14th of December this year, and then the implementation will be in June, from June. Actually, it's almost 1 year. So the implementation will start in June to May 2023. Is it clear?
Great. Maybe,
yes,
yeah, maybe you can put it in the chat as well. And
Okay.
and again, please feel free to ask any questions, everyone. Wonderful, Agra. You want to start us off? You got some thumbs up.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie and Esteline, for the wonderful presentations. So I'd like to give a brief introduction about the GTFS data format and the tools that you can use. And I'll show you some demonstrations on where you can find GTFS data sets and the tools as well. All right, so this is the agenda of my presentation. So we will discuss about the GTFS, what GTFS is, and we'll see the GTFS file structure in briefly, and also I will discuss about mapping transit systems and do a quick demonstration of on the DT4A platforms. And so, for example, the DT4A platforms, we already have data sets for some cities. So what if you don't have any transit data sets for your city? So how can you start building your own GTFS data sets? So I'll show you some, I'll give you some tips on that. And later I'll show some demonstrations on how you can visualize GTFS datasets in a GIS software. So what is GTFS? So the word GTFS is an acronym for the General Transit Feed Specification specification. So GTFS is a de facto standard format for data for transit data, and it's a most common and widely used format for public transportation schedules, and it gives you geographic information of the transit systems. So why are we using GTFS? Why are we interested in the GTFS format? So basically, the benefits of GTFS comes from two major points. The first one is it is a data format it's a uniform data format. So this allows to provide a single and seamless data format or interfaces for transport directions all over the world. So wherever you go, GTFS is a standard format. So the file structure and everything is the same. So it's single and seamless. And the other is that it has no mandates or requirements or legal issues associated with it. So anyone can build a general transit fed specification of their own and put that into an application. And the other benefit is from the opportunities that we can generate out of this standard data format. So it enables researchers and application developers widely. So for example, for researchers, they can, I know that most of you are researchers here, so and you guys can do a comparative analysis and accessibility mapping for cities that has GTFS data sets. And if you are an app developer, you can, the app that you developed for one city can be like the whole framework can be used for another city that has a GTFS data set. And the other perspective is from its open data format. So the GTFS dataset, the GTFS format follows open data. So it's an open data, and this provides an opportunity for it to be continuously improved. So any third party that has some suggestions and some modifications on the whole structure of GTFS, you can provide that, and the community will check that. And if it is okay, then the community will accept that and incorporate it as additional GTFS value. And also the open data format perspective gives an opportunity for app developers to develop more apps, like trip planning apps or analysis apps or data collection apps. So these are the two major points of views of the benefits of the GTFS data format. So Jackie already presented this, so I'm not going to say much about this. So as you can see from the map, this is a map that was taken in 2017, and as you can see, most of the cities that are in white color, in white shade, are like those countries that doesn't have any GTFS standard data sets in 2017. So as you can see, this is mostly on the middle income and low income countries. So we are aiming at changing this, especially for the African continent. And this has like lots of negative impacts, as Jackie discussed. So the missing data infrastructure, it is a barrier to implementing sustainable transport systems. This includes conducting proper analysis and planning for upgrading and integrating multimodal systems. And also, it brings a challenge to build passenger information systems and instituting better network management and fleet operation. So these are the challenge when you don't have transit data in a standard format. So let's discuss about the file structure of GTFS. So GTFS, it has a very simple file structure. So it contains a GTFS dataset, contains a series of comma delimited text files in TXT format. So as you can see on the image on the left, so this is a GTFS file for one city. So all the files are in CSV text formats, and you can edit it in any text editor or Excel, or yeah, this is possible. How it works is that it creates a relational database where the data rows in the fields are linked to the fields in different files by primary keys. So whenever you do editing in a regular text editor, you really need to take care of like the change. For example, if you change one thing in one text file, then you have to do similar change in the other files that are related to the first file. So it builds a relational database, but actually you don't need to use a regular text editor or Excel to edit GTFS. There are lots of bunch of tools that can be used for editing purpose. So in the TXT files or in the text files, we have some of them are required and some of them are not really required. So the required files are the agency files for the stops and the trips, the stop times, the routes, and the calendar. So we will go to each of these files in detail later, focusing on the only on the required files. But if you are interested to know more about this, you can check the Google developers page and you can get like a bunch of information about each files and fields in each files. So basically, this is the structure of the GTFS. Those in green are the required files, and in purple are the optional GTFS files. So this is how the whole database is created. And the first required file is the agency file for the agency. So this file contains information about the transit agencies or the bus companies that provide the service. So in here you can find the agency ID, the name of the agency, and the agency URL and the time zone. So this is one example taken from Accra. So yeah, so as you can see, you can find like basic information about the agency from this file. And the other one is the stops. So these are, as you know, where vehicles pick up and drop off riders. And this can be like, it can be a station or a station entrance if it is a very big station. So yeah, so it contains geographic information. It has fields that contain the stop latitude and longitude. And this means you can simply map it on any mapping software. So the map that you see on the right is taken from Accra. So yeah, so these are the stops in some part of the city. So as you can see, you might see that there are like two stops in like that has one name, similar name. So can you guess why this is? You can put your answers in the chat or jump in if you want and give answers. So some of the, like most of the stations have like two features, like two shapes representing a feature, a station. And can you guess why this is? Or maybe I think I need to answer that. Okay, yeah. So this is because these stations might be, okay, I think, Yeah, so yeah, this can be two stations on the opposite side of the street, so they need to be mapped. They definitely have similar same name, but the stop latitude and longitude differs. So that's why you see two features in like that has similar names. Yeah, and the next required files are the routes and the trips. So the routes are the commonly known names given to the streets or the services. So for example, it can be like the Green Line or the bus number 25, something like that. So it's most widely used, commonly used names for that specific route. So it contains information about that, but unfortunately it's not a geographic data. So, but if you wish to see it on a map, you can simply connect the stations, the ones that we saw in the slide earlier, and try to map the routes, but they are not exact paths of the vehicle. And yeah, so it contains the route ID, the agency ID, and the route type. So these are the critical, the most important fields. So the ones that you see in blue are required fields in each file. And the next one is the trips. So the trips are the instance of a vehicle traveling on a route. So this occurs as a sequence of stops, and it occurs on during a specific time period. And this is not also geographic data. And the other is the stop times. So this is straightforward. So it gives you an information about the stop time and the arrival time of a vehicle. And the other is the calendar. So it contains the service dates. For example, in a weekly schedule. So for example, there might be like some buses that might not give service on specific days. Taking a case of Addis Ababa, for example, we have Sunday markets on specific segments of the city on Saturdays and Sundays. So on those corridors, the bus that operates regularly on the weekday cannot pass through that, so they cannot function in that segment. So for those, for example, the information should be included. This information should be included in this file, yeah, the calendar.txt. So if there are like special occasions happening during the 1 or 2 or more days of the week where that alters the service, then it should be indicated in this file. And the other required file is the shapes.txt. So this is something like the routes, but it follows the path of the vehicle. So it follows the alignment of the route or the street. So it is also a sequence of points, and it contains geographic information. So if you, as I have mentioned, if you want to learn more about this in detail, you can check the Google developers page and get more information about this. So question. So what are the GTFS components that we can directly map or using any GIS software? Can you answer that? I would like to see your answers in the chat. So out of the 6 important or required files, which ones are those we can map in a GIS software? All right, okay. So I think we have an answer. Mayna, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. The routes, she said, or he said the routes. are routes geographic? Can we directly map them? No, the routes are not. So there's, yeah, the stops, that's correct. The stops, we can map them. And drop points or stations. Hakimu, yeah, that are the stops. Yeah. So yeah, these are the files that we can directly map on any GIS software that contains geographic information, the stops and the shapes. Okay. So yeah, GTFS. Oh, okay. There comes another answer from Alexis. All right. Yeah. Okay. That's correct, Alexis. Yeah, so GTFS has its own strengths and weakness. So some of the strengths of the GTFS datasets, as I have mentioned earlier, it can be easily adopted across the world. And this is without any legislation or driving organization. There is no any specific organization that regulates or controls the GTFS system. So anyone can easily adopt it and use it. And the other is the flexibility that it can provide. And this is from its options that you can have, like if you have the required files, you're not required to bring the optional files. The optional files are like not that much necessary, but they are necessary still. But just as a basic GTFS, for a basic GTFS datasets, you only need those 6 files listed earlier. And so the other benefit is like one GTFS feed can contain several modes of transit. So it can be formal transit like buses that operate on a regular base, a fixed schedule, and also other demand-driven services can also use this, and one GTFS can contain that as long as you have the agencies listed clearly in the agencies file. And the other benefit is from its structure. So anyone can build upon the structure, the current structure of GTFS, and bring more and more formats, other formats. For example, there are some formats that are extensions of this GTFS, static GTFS format. These are the GTFS real-time format. So if you have like some good real-time, if you want to get some good real-time arrival information, so you can use the GTFS RT or real-time format. Or for those who wish to use GTFS for paratransit or popular transit systems, as Jackie usually says. So you can use GTFS Flex. So these are extensions of the GTFS, the static GTFS format. And the open source, it's open source and it's constantly improving. So people are adding up new things, bringing new things. So these are the strengths of the GTFS dataset. And the next is the weakness. So GTFS is a data format developed in the US back in 2005. Basically the transit system in the US is mostly it's formal. So the GTFS static format is aimed at mapping the formal transit systems. So yeah, of course, there are extensions, as I have mentioned earlier. So you can use the GTFS Flex format to map your informal transit systems in your cities. And of course, you can also use GTFS, the static GTFS format, to map paratransit service or the informal services. Maybe Jackie and her team worked in this area in like taking the case in Nairobi, the digital matatus. So they used the static GTFS format to map the paratransit. So it's a bit flexible, but it's aimed at mapping the formal transit systems. So the next question is, where is data? So where can I find data? So before answering this, we need to see two scenarios. The first scenario is where we have data, existing transit data. So this existing transit data, you can find it either it might be in the digital format or paper format. So if there is any transit data that is in digital formats, it can be in shapefile format or AutoCAD drawing format. So you can simply convert that into GTFS format and add more of the required files from there. And also the other case is, what if we have paper records? So for this case, you can digitize the GTFS format. You can digitize the paper records in GTFS format. You can export the files in the paper to GTFS format, and there are tools to do that. And the second scenario is, what if we don't have transit data? So in this case, you have to initiate a data collection project by yourselves. So you have to collect data and export and structure the data in a GTFS format. So let's take a look at some of the platforms that we have in the DT4A project. So the first one, before we go deeply into where you can find the data sets, I would like to show you how you can access the DT4A website and what you can find on the website. So you can simply open up your browser and type DigitalTransport4Africa.org. Then you should see this page here. Yeah, so the website supports two languages, one English and the other is French. So you can have the two versions of the website and switch if you'd like to see it in French, for example. So this is the homepage. You can see different mapping projects like the DT4A and the DATAM. So I'll explain more about the DATAM later. And you can find links to the blog posts and the news in the website. And also on the projects page, you can see an interactive map where we have transit data sets. So DATAM is for the South America. So it's a sister project of DT4A. So in the projects page, you can see where we have transit data sets. And in the blogs, as Esteline mentioned, you can find like different articles that were contributed by the global community about research or how to do some aspect of transit mapping. So yeah, so for example, you can see some demonstrations about tools. This is a demonstration for a tool called Convel. So it does accessibility mapping. So you can simply see how you can do that just from this blog. And on the frequently asked questions section, we have explanations about open data and how you can upload transit data in GTFS format. So if you have a GTFS dataset, you can put it here in our website. So I would like to give you 2 minutes to go through the website and check what it has for those of you who are on your computers. So yeah, 2 minutes. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat. Oh. Or jump in and ask if you want. You can turn on your mic and ask. yeah, you can, the video for the website is here on the left side. And I saw that Estelin put a link to the website on the chat. Thank you, Estelin. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, and the other is the resources that we have. This is where you can find the data and tools, and also the information about learning about digital mapping in general. So you can go to the website and click on the resources tab, and from there, under the resources, you can click on the DT4A Resource Center. So my colleague Estelin will put a link. So this is the GitLab site. So you can find policy and application papers contributed by the global community. You can find research papers here, and under the tools, yeah, you have, you can find different tools that can be used for in a GTFS mapping project, transit mapping projects. So as you can see, we have a wide variety of tools that can be used for data collection and editing. And yeah, so, and also web applications, mobile applications, and tools for visualization, and also libraries, and the GTFS converters. So if you have it in a different format, for example, OSM format, you can convert it to GTFS format. So let's see that as an example. So you can click on OSM to GTFS. Yeah, and you will find this, and this is the tool. So you can download the code for the tool and use it in your projects. So if you have it in OSM, so you can convert it into GTFS. So you can simply click on code and download it as a zip file, and you can use this later. And also in the, this is also a bit similar, the public transit tools. So we also have like some tools here that can be used for analysis and conversion. So for example, this tool, the display GTFS in ArcGIS tool is suitable for those of you who use ArcGIS to display your GTFS dataset. So it's a text file, as you know, so you cannot directly copy and bring it to the ArcGIS or any mapping software. So you need these converters. And also we have the static GTFS manager. So it's an application, a web-based application developed by WRI. And you can create and edit and export static GTFS data visually. So this helps you to edit your GTFS rather than using ordinary regular text editing tools. So I'll give you more time later to explore these two platforms. And the next one is the data repository. So to access the data repository, you simply click on the resources on our website. My colleague Estelin will put a link here, and then go to the open data repository and click on Africa. So yeah, and the Latin America is like the DATAM project, dataset from DATAM project. So these are the GTFS datasets that we currently have. So for example, let's say the case of Accra. This is a GTFS dataset contributed by the Accra Mobility Project. So yeah, you can have like simple description of the methodologies they followed and what context they are, they collected the data. You can simply click on the download button and download it to your computer. So let me go to my downloads and extract it. in a folder. So yeah, as you can see, these are the text files. This is a standard GTFS dataset, and you can go through each and see the fields that it has. Yeah, for example, this is the file for the stops, as you can see. It contains the latitude, longitude, and the name of the station. So, yeah, so I would like to give you 2 minutes to explore this. Let me just do this. Go to the website and you can use the resource, go to resource and click on Open Data Repository. And click on Africa. So you can download the datasets for any city that you would like to see. So later on, I will try to show you how you can visualize these text files in QGIS. So yeah, time is up. So I hope you will take a look at this later after this course. So let's move on to the second scenario where you don't have any transit data sets. You need to start from scratch. So for this, you need to collect data and export the data to GTFS and do some data cleaning and validation process. So for data collection, you can find various data collection applications, and sometimes this can be overwhelming. So because there are like lots of mobile applications that you can install on your smartphone and use it for data collection. So we have summarized the most important, like the most frequently used applications, and you can find a blog article about that on our website. So some of these applications might not be like GPS enabled, or they might not count the passengers, or they might not be free, or they might not be connected with OSM. So you can check that blog and learn more about each application. So I hope Estelin will put a link to that blog on the chat. So yeah, so if you want to learn more, if you want to get more tools, so you can simply check our repository and download the tools. And also, as I have mentioned, there is a blog post about the tools that you can use. So you can check that blog post as well. So yeah, the next point is visualizing the GTFS dataset that you have downloaded. So I use QGIS, so it's an open source software. So just type QGIS and run QGIS. From here, I know that Enoch will give us an introduction about QGIS. Then you go to layers, add layer, and add delimited layer text file. Then you just simply go to the file that you just downloaded and click on the stops, because the stops are those files that has the latitude and longitude, and make sure that it's CSV. And click on OK. And the projection system for GTFS is WGS84. So that these are the stations in Accra. So yeah, you can change the property by double clicking on the layer, or right click and click on properties and change the color and maybe the size. I'm trying to reduce the size a bit. Yeah, so these are the stops. And also the other is the shapes. So to to bring the shapes, you need to install a plugin, which is called MMQGIS. There are like a bunch of plugins here. So you can find the plugin that works best for your version of QGIS. So for this case, I used MMQGIS and I installed it, and yeah, simply run it and import geometry, import from CSV file, then browse to the folder where I have the GTFS dataset and click on the shapes. Yeah, and so it will bring all the information, but I need to change the geometry type to polyline and click on OK. Yeah, so these are the shapes, or the exact paths the services follow. And I'm changing the property so that we can have a clear visibility here. So, and bringing the stops up. Yeah, so this is like, from here you can do quick accessibility mapping analysis, any analysis, you can do that. So I'd like to give you 5 minutes to check this. Okay, time is up. I hope you tried to import the GTFS datasets that you have downloaded. So yeah, so this is my presentation. So I know that it's brief and we covered lots of things, and I know that the participants will receive the PowerPoint presentations, and you'll get a chance to take a look to check again if you would like to, and also we are available on our email address here, so you can send us an email if you have any questions or interests in conducting mapping projects. So yeah, so thank you very much. Back to you, Jackie.
Thanks, Agra. That was really terrific. Alexis has a really good question, which is, how updated is the data on our platform? And this is a real challenge for our African cities, because in most places, transit agencies exist, and transit agencies, to plan properly, collect this data and have even real-time data that we haven't talked about. And they make it available to Google and to researchers and others increasingly as a good practice. So researchers have access to updated data, let's say in New York, where I live, or other cities. Because in Africa, a lot of cities don't have transit agencies that are collecting this data. A lot of the work is being done by bottom-up groups. Although increasingly there is support for this work by actors like the French Development Agency. Ideally, transit authorities and local governments in Africa should be collecting this data. They should be hiring young people to have these kinds of capacities, and a lot of cities are not. So it becomes a really big problem to constantly keep these data sets updated. And we are really trying to help to make that happen. Agra or Esteline, or actually any of my colleagues, do you want to speak to this point? Because it's a really important question.
Yeah, Jackie, I think you have covered most of the things, and on Esteline's presentation, we saw that that is the thing that listed as a challenge for the DT4A project. And so the latest data set that we have is from 2019, and so we are working towards improving that and bringing more updated data sets to the repository. So most of the transit agencies or the local governments are not really willing to undertake mapping projects and do data collection and update the repository or the data sets they have. But for example, for research purpose, if you would like to conduct some sort of research using the data sets, I hope this can be used as a baseline or an initial data set. So you can use these data sets as a base, but most of the data sets are not really updated. And you can also use a GTFS editor and update some of the data sets that are in the repository. And I see one question from Alexis, I think, or Ellie. Yeah, Ellie is using ArcGIS, and I did the demonstration in QGIS. For ArcGIS users, you better use a tool, a different tool that is built for ArcGIS. So I'll put a link to that, or you can find it in the repository as well. So I'll put a link to that, so that using that tool, you can simply import the GTFS into an ArcGIS software. Thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions? So I don't know, Alexis, if you want to, if you have any any other follow-up question about that previous question on updating, but like Agra says, like if we get more people working on these data sets, they can help us update. And our next final session will be with Inak and Angela, who work with OpenStreetMap, which tries very hard to at least update, you know, and engage citizen mappers to keep some of the stop data, for example, and route data updated on that platform. So we'll talk a bit more about that, but we need a lot of activism to try to get this kind of capacity and this sort of data available to researchers like you. And we think that you can also help us by sharing and learning how to create these data sets when they're not available. It's much harder, but we have to do it. Great. So let's take a little bit of a break. This has been a lot. Some of you might still be playing around with the GTFS files and QGIS. We're going to talk more about that in the next session. So thank you so much, everyone. And let's take a 5-minute break. And then we're going to come to a very concrete case study, which is the Acromobility project, and talk more about all of these issues. So grab yourself a coffee or tea. I know it's later for where you are. Thank you for staying with us. Talk soon. So Anak and Angela, are you ready?
Yes, just trying to find my unmute button. So Angela can. start, and then I will follow up.
Great, Angela. Yeah.
Let me share my screen. Okay. And hide everyone here. Okay. Please, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Awesome. So my name is Angela Novial-TV, and I'm the Field Research Manager for GUMAP projects. And the full name of GUMAP is Ghana Urban and Accessibility Project. Ghana Urban Mobility and Accessibility Project. To start with the presentation, I'll just give some briefs about Accra and transportation in Accra. Accra is located at the coastal area of Ghana, and it currently has a population of over 4 million people in the city. And over the years, the city has seen a lot of lateral growth, whereby there are a lot of suburbs around the city. The city is the major economic hub of the country, where you have head offices of a lot of companies there, and it's influenced a lot of rural urban migration into the city, hence the expansion and formation of a lot of suburbs. This is causing a lot of issues with mobility, because you have a lot of people in the city and yet they have to move around in a small space. These people move around with company cars, trotros, which constitutes 70% of the mobility in the city. The government has come up with buses for the city as well. But regardless of this, there's still traffic and mobility issues. The minibus here in Ghana is called trotro, but I know it's called several names in other parts of Africa, especially the western and the eastern parts of Africa. The bus below, Ayalolo bus, was an initiative of GAPTE that is set out to modernize the trotro systems that we have in the country. More on that later on in the slides. So just a little bit more about the projects. I will talk about the Accra Mobility as well and its impact on the GUMA project. The project goals, first of all, was to integrate urban mobility planning and public transport operations and regulations. This first aspect of the project was to build capacity in the districts, the municipal assemblies, to equip the head of transport. So in case of their decision making in transportation, they have a fair knowledge of mobility, and they knowing to use the new digital tools to make informed decisions about mobility in Accra. And also traffic planning and management. As I said earlier, a lot of people are moving in a very small space, hence a lot of traffic. And the majority of form of transportation in Ghana, which is the trotros, need to be modernized, hence the aspect of traffic planning and management as well. The stakeholders for this project, it's GAPTE, the people that introduced Ayalolo. At first, it was a BATS Rapid Transit System, BRT, but fell apart at some point, and they've changed their strategy to load and move. So they wait and load, and they move to their arrival terminal. Another one is the Ministry of Local Government. That is it's important to engage all of these people, because they form the MMDAs in the cities, and the MMDAs constitutes the head of transports in these places. KNUST was also part of this project to incorporate traffic management in the courses that will be taught in the universities. The Department of Urban Road as well was involved in this project, because in case there's a need to transform the road network, they also need to be informed about the need for this modernization, how it can be done from the studies that have been conducted. Accra Mobility Projects formed the basis, I would say, for a lot of digital transformation in Accra and other parts of Ghana, like Kumasi, as we see. It first started as an urban resort project, then it moved to forming departments of transport in every district and municipal and metropolitan assembly. Then we had the first phase of assessment of 300 line routes in Accra. And then it's continued with a second phase of detailed classification of these routes. And the third phase was the collection of formalization and collection of the bus stops and routes. And collection of these bus stops and routes in Accra formed the very basics of this new projects that we are talking about. Without it, initial research into digital transportation in Accra and mobility overall will be very much difficult. They have to go back and collect this data, because these are the preliminary data sets that they need to have. And Accra Mobility, because it's an open source data that is hosted on OSM, it's much more easier for the project to use, unlike others that they have to knock on doors of the government and other people, and it will take a long time. But this is much more easier for every member of the project to use. With the case of GUMAP, there was a lot of engagement done with the MMDAs, because they have more information on how transport is in their sector. We asked them to give us some priority routes that they want us to target during this survey. They did, and we had to do some other surveys to validate this route and also digitize the terminals to make easy data collection for us. Just to take you through the surveys that we have done, what we seek to measure within the surveys and the stakeholders we involved in the surveys is this slide. The first one is identification survey. After the MMDs, the head of transports of these institutions have given us their routes that they want us to validate. We went to the field, went to the terminals to validate that, okay, the ones they said they have a route from point A to point B, does it actually exist? We realized that some of them do not exist. So we had to filter all that data, send it back to them for them to validate, tell them that this doesn't exist based on this reason, and we would continue with our surveys. The agency of operating this terminal too was also considered, because when it comes to implementation of these policies, it's important to incorporate these agencies as well. In the trotro system in Accra, agencies are people that operate trotros in the stations. That's what they usually call them. So an agency like GPRTU would ask the government for a place. The government would give them a place to serve as a station or a terminal for them, and then they bring together drivers, car owners to operate from one terminal to the other. We have agencies like GPRTU, Protoa, Tiger, cooperatives that operate transport in Accra. We have other smaller ones too, called amalgamated agencies. With the frequency surveys, the measure of frequency surveys is for us to know the frequency of routes from one terminal to the other. So our field researchers, they go on the field, call them FRs. They go on the field and then stand by the car that is operating that route, the area, the station, and then anytime the car operates in a specific route from, for example, from Medina to Asham and leaves, they indicate on the app that particular bus has left. And it's same for certain periods. We have durations and periods that we do this data collection. Another measure for frequency is occupancy of the routes. We'd like to know the number of people, the occupancy level of the trotros that are leaving the terminal at certain points in time. So you have measures like low, high, or medium to state that, okay, this bus left at high, this bus left at low. There are certain routes that do not fully take people before they leave. First, one, they don't have a lot of patronage of that. So they decide to take a few people and pick the rest along the road. But others have high patronage. So there's always high occupancy anytime the trotro leaves the terminal. Another survey is called the onboard. The onboard survey is said to find the itinerary of the trips, the trip duration, where the passengers board and alight. In this case, the FR gets to the terminal and states that he or she is at the terminal, boards a vehicle, states the time that he or she bought the vehicle, and when the vehicle is about to move, states the time as well. And anytime someone drops and somebody else is also picked on in the trotro, the person also registers that as well. In addition, we add the name of the bus stops that the person drops at. We have another survey that is called the passenger survey. The passenger survey is to find know the passenger's perspective of the public transport in Accra. We ask certain questions like how comfortable was your ride? How long did it take for you to get to the terminal? What did you take to the terminal? Did you walk? Did you take another car? Did you some of these questions we ask when you get to your arrival terminal, do you also have to walk to get to your destination, or it's not too far from your destination? These are also important in some of our analysis to let the head of transport department in the MMDAs know that this is what is going on. We as the project managers, we had a few observations from the surveys that I will talk about as well. The application that we use for this survey is called the Observer. It is by TFC, Transport for Cairo. They are part of this consortium. They have a web application that we use for data monitoring, monitor the quality of data by the FRs. If there are a lot of errors, you call the FR and try to troubleshoot, try to understand the reason why some of these errors are coming up. And also we use it to teach the MMDAs. The idea is that if this project ends, we want the MMDAs to be able to use it as well, understand certain key parameters in their jurisdiction. Our FRs have GIS-enabled phones with the Observer app downloaded on it. I just want to give a demo of just one of the surveys that we do, the frequency surveys that is supposed to check the occupancy and the frequency of a route in the city. When an FR starts a survey, he or she opens his phone and goes to the app, and this is the interface that he sees. Let's use a he in this situation. He sees identification, frequency, onboard, all the travel diaries. In this project, we made use of identification, that is to identify the routes for every terminal, frequency, as I said, occupancy level, and onboard is to check the itinerary, the time traveled from one terminal to the destination of a passenger. The person clicks on frequency, and the frequency opens another part that shows the stations that the FR can do the survey. The app is in such a way that if you are in a certain area, it routes you to your closest terminal for you to take the survey. This is because we do not invite the FRs to the office every day and dispatch them. It's very inefficient because we work with peak periods, morning, afternoon, evening. So it's best for them to depart from their homes to the terminals. So this shows that this FR, there's a survey that you can do closer to you. We have this functionality that only allow login of data when you're inside the terminal. This is to prevent some shady business of people just sitting in their house and just inputting of data. So you have to be inside the terminal that we have pre-digitized into the system. The FR chooses the station that he's in to confirm. This shows, in case the FR is very far from the terminal, this shows how far he is and where to walk to that place. So to start the survey, he clicks on Add Trip, and Add Trip shows the trips that are available at the terminal at that particular time for he to take the survey. The app is in such a way that you can do 2, 3, 4 surveys at a time because of the structure of the terminals. It's possible for you to see 4, 3, 2 vehicles close and they are operating different routes. So you can just sit somewhere and log in anytime they leave and also add the occupancy at any time. We have a duration for this data logs, and if the duration is up, maybe you are doing 4 surveys, it just closes that dialogue and the other ones continue until you are done. For the observations from this project, we realized that there's poor road infrastructure in Accra, and this largely affects the state of vehicles. Vehicles would be imported into Ghana and they probably were used for 10, 15 years. But because of the poor state of the roads, when they are used for 4 or 5 years, it's not in any good state to be used at all. And this is something that the drivers talked about because they spend so much time and they are unable to recoup their investment even with high cost of maintenance. It's an issue. What they strategically do also is that they move the old vehicles to the poor roads. So if you're in Accra and you're going on a very bad road, it's likely you'll be in a very cricket car. But the good ones have, let's say they are okay, they are better ones. Because of traffic in town, there are some drivers that like to avoid the usual route to their destination. So they enter into the residential areas just to dodge traffic, causing more of air pollution and noise in those areas. The terminals suffer from an issue of floating vehicles. As I stated earlier, there are agencies that operate terminals. So every car, it's supposed, as it should be, to work under an agency. But there are some drivers don't work under any agency at all, and they park very close to the terminals. Their waiting times are way less, and they will take you there faster than the usual trotros. So most people prefer to use them instead of going to the terminal and wait for a much more longer duration. And they also form a lot of illegal terminals just because there's a residential area somewhere, so there are a lot of people coming in and out, so they just create a small terminal, they park there and they load people. This causes a lot of low patronage to these terminals as well. A positive observation, it's there's a presence of certain scheduled services. One of the objectives of the project is also try to experiment with scheduled services in some parts of Accra, whereby you get to a terminal and you know that by this time you get a vehicle and etc. There's a terminal Amasaman that is in the suburbs, very far from the city, and there's another terminal called Temahabo that is in the harbor, of course. So the market women that go to the harbor wake up very early at 4 o'clock and move to the harbor at that time to get the fish, go to their markets around the harbor, and they close around 9 o'clock and come back home. So there's a vehicle that moves from just Amasaman to Temahabo within that period to accommodate just those people, which is a very interesting trend that is going on in that part of the suburb. And because of the floating vehicles and low patronage to some of the terminals, in my word, I classify them as dying, because when you get to some terminals, they are just maybe there's no trotro operating at all, and even the taxis that are in those terminals just to drop in. Dropping is a phenomenon. It's in a way that when you want to get to a specific place, the taxi will just pick you, only you, and send you there. So the reason why certain terminals are doing well despite the low patronage is because they have markets and intracity routes that operate. So anytime a woman goes to the market or a man goes to the market and buy stuff, food stuff for the house, he will just go to the bus stop or the terminal that is inside the market. It makes more sense to take the car. So all those terminals always have constant customers coming in and out, in and out. And the intracity routes are the ones that move from Accra to other parts of the region, which cause a lot of traction to these terminals. In conclusion, transport data is vital, not only to governments, is vital to development partners for them to do need assessments and see where exactly an issue is going on. Researchers like me and you need this type of data to be able to make our research in transport. And also humanitarian organizations also require this data as well. Businesses can use this data for business intelligence location, and startups like Trophy. Trophy is a startup that uses OSM data that was generated from Accra Mobility, and possibly use the one that will be generated from GroupMap after data cleaning and everything. Just to leave you with a picture that is something that's very common in Accra is that, and I hope maybe the other parts of Africa, the cars are branded in very interesting catchphrases, or maybe very interesting words. And just to leave you with this one, observers are worried. We should be, let's say, worried that certain things are going a certain way, and try to make our own quota to make our transports better, I would say. Thank you very much. That's me, Angela.
Thank you, Angela. That was terrific. Completely fascinating work that you're doing, and really showing very concretely how to use these digital tools and data to think differently about your transport system and how to advocate for improvements bottom up. But it's very interesting in Accra that the government is very supportive of this work, and in fact has been doing a lot of the mapping work with Accra Mobility. So yeah, do we have any questions for Angela? Really interesting presentation. Yes. We have a question from Samuel. What in quantitative terms is low, medium, and high passenger load capacity?
Okay, before I turn to Samuel, just to add to the government's interest, I would also acknowledge the role of the development partners in this project and how they incorporate them into this whole process, for them just not to be presented with the data and that is what we've got, but also teach them how to, and how they incorporate open source and open source communities like OSM in this data collection. Usually, okay, back to Samuel, we have cars that are 12 to 15 seater buses. They sit 12 to 15 people. So quantitatively, maybe a low could be 2 to 5 people, and a medium could be 7 to 8, and then a high could be a full capacity of people joining in. Yeah.
Great. Hopefully that answers the question, Samuel. Let us know if not. Angela, I was also really curious about the university's role, and also the way the university is rethinking its curriculum. I'm wondering how much of these new digital tools and data is making its way into university classes in Africa. Can you speak to that? Because I know many people here are researchers, university students, maybe professors.
Yes, and I'm very happy about that initiative of the project. With transports, it's a very new curriculum in the universities, so they are also given the opportunities to transport people who are interested in transport to take part. So when it comes to projects, would have local content and local knowledge to be able to implement this project better. In terms of the data, I can't really speak so much about that, but I mean, there's so much data on transport in Ghana. Why aren't you using it? Yeah, but I think definitely it will be part of their curriculum.
That's great. And I do believe, to Alexis's point about updated data, that very soon you will have an updated data set for Accra. Is that right?
Yeah, that is really awesome. I'm very happy that would have an updated from Accra Mobility.
And do you know when that will be uploaded to DT4A?
That I'm not so sure of, because we are still doing some rectification and talking to the stakeholders, because they need to present the data to them first, and then we can release it to the public.
Perfect. And we have a question from Gift. Could you comment on the informal stops on the routes?
Yes, the informal stops on the route, they are also one of the major causes of traffic in Ghana, because stops in Ghana usually have a demarcation where the driver leaves the road and goes to the shoulder of the road to drop people. But if that accommodation is not made, he just stops midway, maybe just go a little bit onto the shoulder and drop people. It's quite difficult for us, the data collectors, but for it's up to the MMDAs to say that these are actual stops for you to stop at and actually implement these stops that they have allocated for people to get down at.
Great. Oh, we have some more questions. I know Enoch is going to go next, but Enoch, actually, we will have time in the next class if you don't finish. But I think it's important to answer these questions. So are there safety issues of some terminals that will make them not optimally used or dying, as you put it?
Safety issues with the terminal in relation to they dying, it's about the patronage mostly by the passengers. So it's a patronage that is making them not I'll say usable for a lot of people, because they need let's say 4, 5, 6 passengers at least to move. With maybe some other safety issues with some terminals, it's best for you to hold your belongings close to you, because it could be snatched. We had to give our FR certain safety talks that if they are doing the recording, they should try their best to not be so close to the window, because it's likely that they could take their phones and belongings from them. I hope I've answered the question. Some more.
Thanks, Angela. Yeah. Yes, he says yes.
Awesome.
Great. So we have basically 20 minutes. Enoch, perhaps you can start on your presentation knowing that you will have some more time. And I know that you are also going to suggest some exercises that people try between now and the next class. So if you want to jump in and see how much you can get through and make sure that you let us know what those exercises are, that would be great. We want to take just a few minutes at the end to have Daniel talk about the next session. So I really want you to know that we are going to make sure you can get through everything, even if we have to, have more time next class.
Sure, I will be super quick. And please, if you don't understand something, you can always get in touch with us. Jackie will share the email addresses. So my name is Enoch, and I'm going to talk to you briefly about OpenStreetMap and GS, focusing specifically on free and open source tools and software. And 4 years ago, I happened to be the mapping supervisor of Accra Mobility 3, which saw data added into OpenStreetMap that is serving as basis for Google Map and new projects. First thing I always like to put on my slide is that we all know, but sometimes maybe we seem to forget that whatever we do is happening somewhere and has a location component, be it on a smartphone or walking around. There's always the where question to be answered. Likewise, the global goals all have a location component, telling we can put them into space where we're trying to eliminate hunger, where we're making cities more sustainable. And expert group at the UN, Geospatial, poses that, yeah, geospatial data is has a statistical component. It requires a multi-stakeholder approach. That is how come when we're doing projects or we mapping transport in a city, it's not only one person or an institution. It involves a lot of ministries and stakeholders. You can see from Accra's use case and others as well. So this brings me now to what GIS is. It's an abbreviation. It stands for Geographic Information Systems, or where you stand, you can call it Geographic Information Science as well. So basically, this is a system designed to capture and then manage, analyze, and do a lot of stuff to data. It could be statistical data, but has a spatial or geographic element attached to it as well. GIS comes in several forms, from desktop to mobile. You use your mobile phone to search for the nearest restaurant or maybe nearest hospital, pharmacy. There is some kind of GIS or spatial computation involved in this. So maybe you are not sure that whatever you are using or what you are doing has a GIS element attached to it, but GIS is the basics of most of the stuff we do from our application, ride hailing, finding nearest something or proximity, and so on and so forth. And it requires some kind of data. Data is very important. It could be an enterprise level database or your own database, a small text file which contains data, just like we saw from GTFS, is a text file or CSV. GIS is a layered system. We normally see maps are mostly the basic end product of a GIS analysis, or what you present after conducting whatever you want to do in a GIS system, be it a web map or static map, which is on paper, hung on the wall. So it's a set of layers. We can have roads, we can have hydrography, elevation, and then sometimes image or land use layers, depending on what you are doing. In GIS, there is two very crucial, important type of elements or data, which we call vector and then raster. Basically, if we need to represent objects on the surface of the earth, we need these basic geometries from basic school arithmetic or mathematics. We plot graphs, we have a sheet with squares that you can plot some coordinates, basically. That is how vector data works. The basic one is a point. From a point, we can get lines, and then from lines, we can connect back to where it's starting from to get a polygon. So points, line, polygons are the basic elements of vector data, which are also used to represent spatial data or data on the surface of the earth. They come in several formats. It could be CSV, GeoJSON. There are a lot of them. Shape files, of course, which is not just one file by several file. I prefer GeoPackage, and for this workshop, I prepared a small GeoPackage, because if you need to share a shape file, you need to share all these files, and if one of them is missing, you might run into trouble. Raster data, on the other side, we all take pictures with our smartphone, or we have at a point in time zoom into an image and we see some boxes, these pixels, grids. So raster data basically stores continuous data. These pixels we see have unique values, either 1, 2, 3, or something, which is representing the color. You could store elevation data or digital surface model as well. When Agra was presenting, when he added the stops data, he mentioned about projections. Projections are very important. If you're working with spatial data, we need to know where in the world this is. So there are projections that are global, that are local, and then local meaning that this projection is created or fits well for Ghana, fits well for Kenya, fits for Europe or Eastern Africa or wherever. But there are global projections that fits for data that is worldwide, like WGS84, which is used by the GPS receivers, and then the data in GTFS is also in this one. So why GIS? GIS is very crucial in terms of most sectors. You can see my first case of all global growth having a location component, and whatever we do happens somewhere. So from accessibility to field data collection all requires some level of GIS because of the location component. Data in a spreadsheet normally might look like this to us, with rows and columns, and with a special component, latitude and longitude, we can plot this, we can load this into a GIS system and then see them, but it still doesn't represent anything we want to communicate. But with a basic visualization technique like heat maps, we could see how concentrated these points are. Maybe these points are based on the number of schools, or this is from road crash data in Accra, I think in the year 2018 or 17. And you could see that if legend or more information is provided in this map, you can tell that, okay, the intensity of the color describes what is happening. So GIS applications now are tools that we use to make some GIS analysis or process, analyze, see them as a word processor for your word application, Microsoft Word, it could be LibreOffice or whatever. So we have two major categories. It could be free and open source software, or proprietary or commercial one, which you have to pay for a license. It could either be proprietary software, can be closed source or commercial as well, meaning you can pay for it, but you can still modify it around. So I'm talking about QGIS, because QGIS is free and open source. It serves as basis for some other tools as well. But generally, there is an assumption that if software is free and open source, then it's really not good, or it's security. There are a lot of talks and rumors and myths about open source software. But this is one thing I was talking about recently. Esri, Google, all the big companies have some level of open source software running in their system. So this graphical representation tells you that, okay, it could be a big system, but within a small tiny lake, there is a small software there, which is free and open source. Doesn't mean necessarily that it's, if you pay for it, then it's secured. But Google Earth, which is a very intuitive tool to do 3D moving around the world, also gives you information that GDAL, which is one tool that QGIS relies on, is making Google Earth, the world that they want to say, go around. So what is QGIS? It's a desktop application. You can see it on the same level as ArcGIS, which you can do the same stuff, produce maps, do analysis and stuff. It's an OSGeo project. It's open source, meaning that you don't have to pay for it. You can still pay for it if someone makes a lot of changes to it and gives you, but generally everybody can go grab it and use it on the fly. There's a community behind it. It's fun and it's for business. It can be used for applications or products that can bring back returns and impact as well. Now this leads me to data sources. Where we need to do a geospatial analysis or GIS, and we need data. We spoke about data in all the presentations or talks today, and data is very scarce on our continent, which is no surprise, but generally, government is the largest producer of data. It could be local, regional, or national, and then the private sector also produces data as well. And the third option, which is the crowd, brings me to OpenStreetMap, which we've heard of today, OSM for short. So OpenStreetMap is a community platform that is like Wikipedia of maps. We all know Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the free encyclopedia that anyone can contribute to. So we see OpenStreetMap also got the inspiration from Wikipedia. So anyone can contribute location information. So it's global, it's online, offline. Map data is open data, meaning that you can create, adapt, and share. And it's a global initiative to create a map of the world and spatial data from scratch. It's used by many. I use OpenStreetMap, used by many. The UN uses, the World Bank, ride-hailing, Facebook, Apple uses Open, and DT for a project for that matter. Also use OpenStreetMap as a repository for data which can be accessed by everyone. Now, how does data get into OpenStreetMap? The key feature or importance in OpenStreetMap is called local knowledge. If I can see a building from a satellite image, but I can't tell if this building is a school building, a church, or any other stuff. But with local knowledge, you visit this shop, you know what is the name, you know the opening hours. That is what makes OpenStreetMap. imports, government or someone have data, they've given it out in license that is compatible with OSM, that everybody can use my data. There are GPS traces, somebody puts it there and someone sees it and says, oh, this is not wrong, the shop should be here, the name should not be block capital letters, and they fix it. So in OpenStreetMap, there are tools called editors, which are used to add data. The most common one is ID editor, which I'll quickly demonstrate if you have much time. And then ID helps you add, so editors help you to put data into OpenStreetMap or update them. And ID is one, which is basic, everybody can use. JOSM, which is advanced and very interesting. And this was what we use for Accra mobility mapping into OpenStreetMap. You could see some pink lines, these are GPS traces. So with your smartphone, you could record GPS traces. Applications brings me to some useful tools. This OSM tracker, which also pop up on Agra's slide, was the primary tool that we use for Accra mobility data collection, which is GPS traces from start to stop, collecting the name of the stops, where they stop, and other information that needs to be part of creating a route and this stops file that you see recently. So because it's lightweight, you can run on your smartphone and you collect your trace. Maybe you are taking a hike or you are walking in a community where you're conducting a survey. This helps you to see where you are passed, what time, records timestamp and velocity and all other stuff. OSM and this is a tool, an application. You can see it like a Google Maps for your phone, but I would say it's more than a Google Maps because there are many things you could do. You could record GPS trace from it, and this uses OpenStreetMap data because it's open data. You can have it offline on your phone. So I can have the entire Ghana offline on my phone. I can do routing on it. I can export a GPS trace, several stuff. One thing that I wouldn't speak without talking about is we as researchers or collecting data, you need, sometimes we use a paper to write this, but with Open Data Kit and Kobo Toolbox, you could collect data as well as collect spatial elements. So when we are conducting surveys, sometimes we just collect, we collect the data, but if you are moving from community to community, you might be interested into the spatial pattern of how this turned out. So collecting location from data surveys is also very important thing to start considering if we don't already. So to sum it up all, spatial data is important and statistical data is very useful, gives us a meanings, but with the spatial part of it, we could see the spatial pattern as I mentioned, and then the global goals, of course, require this in order for us to achieve them because we need to know and we can now measure the metrics and several others. So I think we have only just 5 minutes. If not to take much time, I can quickly just go to, this is OpenStreetMap. You just go to osm.org or openstreetmap.org. Over here, you have options to edit because you are not logged. It's a database. Initially, you could contribute to OpenStreetMap anonymously, but it's a database. Now you have to sign up. You don't need to use your real name if you care about people not knowing your name and that kind of stuff. The privacy of concern as well. There's a lot of discussions on this, but there is a good page that talks about privacy in OpenStreetMap that I can refer you to as well. So there's GPS traces in OSM. So I just added here, when you come here, you see the standard map, the cycle. This just change the kind of visualization of data in OpenStreetMap. I checked these public GPS traces because you can see GPS traces displayed in very colorful fashion, all coming from, most of this is coming from the Accra Mobility Project, but individuals can collect GPS traces as well and add. So you just need to sign up and you have an account. And these are GPS traces. When you click on GPS traces here, they are all coming from around the world. And there's user diaries where people write about what they are doing in OpenStreetMap and many others. So quickly, I will just log in here to show us. So I sign in, I have my username and password. Okay, what happens? Issue working out good. So this is Accra. Maybe I live around here, I don't know, but you can see a lot of blue dots on the map. These are all bus stops coming from Accra Mobility Project. So I can click edit and then use ID, which is in the browser. And maybe you don't know where you are, so you have to, I start all over again. You don't know where you are, how to get to wherever I am. There's a search box here. I wanted to go to Accra, so I can search for Accra. There's not only one Accra in the world. There are other Accras, maybe a bus stop called Accra, but these are all in the geographic extent. So I can zoom in and pan by clicking and dragging to somewhere around here. And then I use edit in ID editor. So what happens basically is that you are provided with a base map, which is a satellite image, and it's a raster, you can see. And then with raster, we can get vector data from this by georeferencing. So you could see these are data entered by people, and every data in OSM has history to it. So you can see who added what at what time. And one example that I like to demonstrate is this coming from Accra Mobility. We did this in, let's say, 4 years ago, but along the line, you could see there are some things changing. Initially, it was on the other side of the road here, so but someone moved it to the other side and left a comment that the location of Alajo bus stop for the total right was wrong. So I shifted it. This is value or something that the transport department wouldn't have gotten if this data was sitting just in the department without anybody. Maybe they still modify it. We also, as a mapping supervisor, we check the data, but it's not all the places we can go to. But with the crowd and enough people having knowledge about OpenStreetMap, the value for it, and how we can reuse it, I think we can have a good and well-maintained data on the continent. Why OpenStreetMap is important because most of our countries don't have a go-to open data portal, especially in terms of geospatial, where you can grab data from. So here, I think most of stuff have been mapped here already. And the issue we have is sometimes the images are very old. These are images given out by these institutions like Bing. When OpenStreetMap started, it was just a black background. So as we say, one is better than none. I wanted to demonstrate one, but I don't know where I am, that everything seems to be mapped. That is a good quality of some areas and communities. So I check here, which my time is almost up, but I want to demonstrate one at least. So this is a building, I can tell for sure, even though I've never been here, but base information like the footprint of this building. So we have point, line, and area. So I click on this and click, leave the mouse, move it, click, and I click on the last one, double click. I have a polygon. I can right click and make it a square. Then what is this on the surface of the earth? So in OpenStreetMap, we call them tags. So this is a building. So all I can do is search for a building here. It's a building. So this eye here displays some basic information about it. And then this is useful information. I can save this now in OSM. Tracing without adding a tag is completely useless because it could be a swimming pool, it could be a football field. All right, so tags are what give meaning to. So I can say added building. So we add a comment here, which makes it useful for other people trying to make the map a better one. So when you can see there are some information about the community in Ghana with and globally. So I can see this change set now on OSM within a few minutes or few seconds. This should be visible here. So I added a building. I was going to demonstrate how to put data from OpenStreetMap into QGIS, but the time is limited. What I will entreat us to do is, everybody can sign up on OSM and then try to zoom into where you know very well and try to see if you could map some stuff like maybe a shop and other useful amenities around you as well. Just to quickly go back to OSM tracker, which I am very sure will be very useful to us as researchers or collecting data, because you want to be able to, sometimes you go to communities with our smartphones, they have endless power. So with this small application, especially on Android, you can record the GPS traces that when you come back home, you could use to generate data as well. we will share links to some resources like for QGIS. QGIS tutorials is a highly recommended one that we will share at well, which you can use to do a lot of stuff with GIS in general. So Jackie, if I still get some 5 minutes, I can be able to demonstrate QGIS quickly, but if we are pressed on time, then I would like to pause here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Enoch. I really encourage everyone to sign in to OpenStreetMaps and try this out. Enoch, you did have a question, which is from Luis. Who's asking, what is the sample frequency of this data tools? Luis, do you want to mute yourself? And
which the OSM tracker?
Yeah, which tool?
Okay, so with OSM tracker is on the phone, so you can define the frequency at which data is logged by. I think there's a range from 0 is continuous, and then 1 second, 2 seconds, up to I think it's up to 10 seconds. When you look at the DT4A repository, and then there's a paper here for I think is it this one? There is one paper that talks about before it was just published, before it's in the papers. No, not this one. There is one that talk about all this. Yeah, I think it should be this one. This very one. Oh no, it's not this one too. Right click to. So one of the papers, this one there. This one, I am very sure of it now. So is this one? And when you look at this OSM tracker is being spoke about here, and the parameters we use to collect this data, I think some information, I'm scrolling too fast, but I just want to get there, I think, yeah. So we set this to, where did it start? Yeah, so it was, we used 5 seconds for the data login, so that it's not heavy on battery too much, because most of the roads are already mapped in OSM, and we didn't want to put a lot of pressure on the battery as well. So 5 seconds was enough for us. And an example of GPS trace from the project is, I'll just open it here quickly for you to see. Where is this? Yeah, I added them to show, but all the GPS traces are in OSM, and it should be document GPS traces. Yeah, this is an example of GPS trace from the project, and this is in OSM. So when you add the OpenStreetMap to the background, which is by default here, you should see that this is in Accra, and it shows us where it was taken. I put in the background, so you can see the pattern of the route. So more information is on the wiki, and then the DT4A project. So this OSM wiki page, I'll paste the link into the, when you go for the DT4A resources too, you should find similar. I can't see the information to paste, but I'll paste it. Has information about the data, the approach, all collected. This shows the frequency at which the data was mapped into OpenStreetMap, and you can see GTFS is also popping up here, and the manual, if you need to generate the GTFS, similar things Agrao showed as well. And if you need the GPS traces for your research to analyze the speed and other information, they are all available in OpenStreetMap as identifiable, meaning you have every information in the text file that you can analyze. So these are all the routes collected. Thank you, Jackie. I hope I answered the question.
Luis says thank you, so I think you did. Okay. This is terrific, Enoch. I wonder if, given that we're at time, we will have a recap session in our next class where there's any questions, anything people want to talk about, especially after reading some of the blogs and some of the materials. And I'm wondering if at that point you want to revisit the QGIS. You've asked us to download it, so we should be playing with it. And so maybe the start of next class, when we do the recap, we can go through it when everyone's fresh. Is that okay?
That is very okay. The data, I was going to use this in the GitLab, but this resource is a highly recommended one that you can try around yourself, but I hope to make it more understandable in the next session as well, if you still have some questions.
That's perfect. And then I really admire all the people who have really stuck here on a Friday evening. But I'll just now very briefly give Daniel and Constant a few minutes to just briefly say what we're going to do next time in their sessions. Very important sessions. Daniel, do you want to start?
Sure. And just to echo the admiration for your resilience to stay for this session, although it has been inspiring. Energy is running low on a Friday. Very quickly, on the 6th of December, we will have two case studies. I will speak about the first one, which is about walkability in Freetown. So we're going to speak about frameworks, methods, and a bit of findings about the research that we recently completed with a group in Sierra Leone, in Osaka University, and here in University College London, where we use participatory mapping to collect information about the everyday walking environment in a hilly, low-income settlement in Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone. So I will be sharing with you some tools and hopefully some resources that will be useful for looking at pedestrians in African cities.
Thanks, Daniel. And you have some really interesting reading that people can do in advance. And you can also look at his Walking Cities lab, which also has interesting materials. Constant, you want to say a word or two?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Before we disappear, we're going to talk a bit about local sensors in air quality monitoring and relating it to transport research, as well as other aspects of urban development that are related to transportation. As you know, transportation is comes also with other issues like land use management and human settlements, etc. But we're going to look at how we can use local sensors in transport research and transport work. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I think this has been an incredible session. We have recorded it for others who haven't been here. And the next session is also super important, very cutting edge and important work. So I hope you'll join us then. And then please do fill out our Google form so we can know a little bit more about you and any comments you have on this session and any suggestions for our next class. So thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Special thanks to all the wonderful speakers and instructors. So we will see you December 6th.
Thank you very much, Jackie.
Thank you, and have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Great weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie, for organizing this. It's been great.
Okay, take care. We'll be in touch, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.